All right. The subject today is how to win the argument with meat eaters. And I'm assuming that my audience today skews vegan. But for those who may be listening who are not vegan, please take this as an argument for why you should join our team. We'd love to have you. We need more members. Uh, there are generally three reasons why people adopt the vegan diet: for their own health, for the environment, or for the animals, to end the cruel confinement and slaughter of animals. All three arguments are equally valid and persuasive to me and probably to many of you listening. But what's the best way to convert meat eaters to veganism? Is it to try to convince them that meat eating is cruel to animals, that we have no moral right to effectively enslave and kill other sentient beings? Or is it to try to raise the alarm about how animal agriculture burns the land and creates deserts, wastes tremendous amounts of water and pollutes our waters and fouls the environment with cesspools of manure, and is responsible for most of the deforestation in the world and most of the biodiversity loss, and is the leading cause of climate change? In short, the fact that animal agriculture is an environmental nightmare. Or is it to try to convince people that they'll live longer and thrive on a vegan diet? Should we simply appeal to people's immediate self-interest? They will likely become healthier and live longer if they give up animal foods. Well, you may sense that the person you're debating is most open to the environmental argument, and so you may decide to go with that. Or maybe your meat-eating friend thinks of herself as a big animal lover. Then you may want to stress the moral argument about killing sentient beings. There's no one right answer. But I want to suggest what I believe is the strongest argument to be prepared to make with non-vegans. Be prepared for the health debate. I don't think anybody has ever argued that confining, slaughtering, and eating animals is better for the animals. That's a hard case to make. Meat defenders generally grant that advantage to the vegans. And almost all meat eaters with any degree of environmental consciousness concede that the plant-based diet is better for the environment in all kinds of ways, since it's impossible to argue that cesspools of manure, the industry calls them lagoons, it's impossible to argue that cesspools of manure improve the environment, or that gigatons of methane belched into the atmosphere improve the climate, or that chopping back the Amazon to allow for cattle grazing does the planet any good, or that the trawling of the ocean floor by industrial fishing helps the oceans. Meat eaters often know that, but it just doesn't matter enough to them. That's why I think it's most important to lead with the health argument, or at least to be prepared to make the health argument. Choosing to avoid meat and eat a plant-based diet has never seemed so virtuous and necessary. Between the intrinsic cruelty of industrial livestock production and livestock's climate footprint, estimated by the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization to be 14.5% of all greenhouse gases worldwide, significantly greater than that of plant agriculture, it has become increasingly difficult to defend the place of meat and animal-sourced foods in our diets. Who wrote these words? They were written by Gary Taubes, perhaps the leading advocate of beef eating and the keto diet. Even Gary Taubes concedes the animal cruelty argument and the environmental argument. He just believes that though it's a shame that animal agriculture destroys the environment and is cruel to animals, eating them is healthy. So if we win the health argument, the other side has nothing left, as Gary Taubes has effectively conceded. Two kinds of scales symbolize the opportunity here. The first is the balance scale, because the argument you'll hear most often from meat eaters is a balancing of goods versus harms. Almost all meat eaters concede, after all, the environmental and animal cruelty debate. So what these meat defenders do is balance the harm done to the animals and to the environment with the supposed good of meat eating to your health. You've heard people say something like, yeah, it's a shame that the animals have to die. I wish they were treated better. And I know that the methane emitted by cows is bad for the climate. But after all, animal foods are healthy and people have to get their protein and their calcium. And those harms are a shame, but they're the price we just have to pay because people's health comes first. I don't want to be weak or anemic or protein deficient. So if you could convince these people that animal foods are in fact unhealthy, that everything they believe about meat eating and health is a myth, they have no case. When the truth hits them that meat and dairy are in fact making us sick and killing us, and that we'd have far more food if we didn't feed our food, grains, to animals, that balance scale becomes pointless because all the weight is on one side of the scale. And then there's that other scale, the scale that you weigh yourself on. This scale is even more important to most Americans because along with Mexico, which now eats a diet resembling ours, we are the fattest nation on earth. North America is the fattest continent on earth. 42% of Americans are obese. 74% of Americans are considered either overweight or obese. And you'll encounter a lot of meat eaters who actually believe that eating meat helps keep their weight down because they believe that carbs make you fat. So with regard to both scales, if you win the health argument, you win the debate. Even if you can just convince people that they'll lose weight on a plant-based diet, they may not care about the animals or the planet or even other health concerns. They just want to get in shape. That's 74% of Americans who have that concern as a top priority. So winning the health argument is crucial, and particularly understanding how diet affects your weight. The knock on the vegan diet is that it makes you weak, presumably the same way it makes elephants and bulls and rhinos and gorillas weak. The documentary Game Changers about vegan bodybuilders help some, but the myth persists. You've got to be able to counter the myths. And what makes the myths sound impressive is when scientific studies are cited to defend them. When people try to make the case for eating meat and dairy, they often say that they read this study or that study that said that meat eating is healthy or at least not too unhealthy, or they read an article that vegans have weak bones or smaller brains or their teeth fall out. The internet is full of disinformation. You can find articles to support the thesis that the world is flat. The truth is that the overwhelming evidence in scientific studies supports a plant-based diet. Study after study shows that the plant-based diet leads to healthier blood pressure and lower risk of cardiovascular disease and cancer than a diet high in animal foods. Study after study shows that the plant-based diet leads to a healthier weight than a diet high in animal foods. You can browse nutritionfacts.org to find countless videos about studies that support the vegan diet. But if you look hard enough, you can also find studies that cast shade on the vegan diet. Just Google, "Is a vegan diet healthy? Studies," and you'll find a world of articles and links to studies detailing the health advantages of a vegan diet, and you'll also find some articles and studies that claim that a vegan diet is risky. It took me just a minute to find a study that claimed, quote, "Vegans have a greater prevalence of mental health problems, which may lead to a poorer quality of life. An optimal diet should be balanced, consisting of lean meat, nuts, fresh fruits and vegetables, and olive oil. A wholesome diet is essential in maintaining a healthy gut flora, which in turn is pivotal in avoiding inflammatory disorders." Now, if you're a committed longtime vegan, you read attacks like this associating veganism with mental health problems, you tend to roll your eyes and wonder where the heck they came up with this nonsense. What's the basis for this extraordinary accusation? But if you're not already a vegan, or maybe you're considering becoming a vegan, it sounds alarming. Vegans have a greater prevalence of mental health problems? That doesn't sound good. Maybe the vegan diet is too extreme if it leads to mental health problems. Let's come back to this quote, casting shade on veganism later, and see if it's true and just how worrisome it should be. Let's agree on one thing, that you could find a nutritional study to support almost any proposition. Why is it that you could find a study to support almost any proposition? Because research scientists do so many bad studies. There's a lot of money in research, and studies are done that are designed to create confusion. Maybe there's an incentive for research scientists to create confusion because that enables them to get more grants to do more studies. There are no studies, after all, as far as I know, on the motivations of nutritional research scientists when they design studies, but I'd love to see that study. Anyway, here's the problem. Let's say you want to do a study on whether or not a vegan diet is healthy. You can contrast one group eating vegan with one group of people eating meat, right? Now, it's sometimes said that the ideal research study is a double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized study. That's how drug studies are often done. So if you can do that, you'd have a highly regarded scientific study. What does it mean to be a double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized study? Double-blind means that neither the patients nor the researchers, doctors, know which study group the patients are in. So if you're testing a new drug, neither you nor your doctor knows if you're getting the new drug or a placebo. How do you do that with food? Put on a blindfold every time you eat? Somehow try not to taste the food so you don't know what you're eating? Obviously, you can't do a double-blind study of diet. Can you use a placebo? Half the people eat a thing that looks like meat, but it's really a sugar placebo? No, there are no food placebos. Can you do a randomized study? Well, a randomized study randomly assigns participants to either an experimental group or a control group. There's a popular Netflix film now called You Are What You Eat, a twin experiment in which they randomly assign people to eat either the meat diet or the vegan diet. And some people who wanted to be on the vegan diet wound up on the meat diet, and some people who wanted to be on the meat diet got assigned the vegan diet. What did they gain through the randomization? They could say it was more scientific to be randomized, but they just wound up with participants who were more likely to cheat on their diet. They even filmed a woman who was supposed to be on the vegan diet, but she didn't want to be, and she started eating chicken. All these study design metrics, randomized, placebo-controlled, double-blind, may be the best way to do drug studies, but they're completely irrelevant to nutritional studies. And so most nutritional studies are what we call self-reporting. In self-reporting studies, people go home, eat whatever they want to eat, and once a week or so try to remember what they ate, or fill out a food diary, or fill out a questionnaire. Proving my point that researchers like to create work for themselves, there was actually a study done of self-reporting studies. And it found, quote, a strong and consistent systemic underreporting of energy intake across adults and children in studies. Underreporting of energy intake has been found to increase with body mass index, and the differences between macronutrient reports indicate that not all foods are underreported equally. So people either don't remember everything they ate, or they underreport when they binge on ice cream and cookies. Self-reporting studies are, for the most part, highly dubious, and that's most nutritional studies that you come across. If you do a study of meat eaters versus vegans, you run into these complicating factors. First, are the self-reported vegans on a healthy, whole foods, low-fat vegan diet, or are they eating French fries and drinking Coke? Did the self-reported vegans become vegan at age 65 after being diagnosed with heart disease? Are some of the meat eaters eating more fruits and vegetables than the vegans? And then there are lifestyle factors like exercise, smoking, drinking, sleep, and drug use that also affect health. Again, even though most studies show health advantages to the vegan diet, it's probably not worth your time to debate studies. Chances are that you're not a nutritional research scientist, and neither is the person you're debating. And since many nutritional studies are self-reporting studies that are badly designed and all but worthless, a debate between two people who are not familiar with the drawbacks of the dubious studies they're citing is a debate worth nobody's time. Instead of arguing over studies, let's use logic to analyze diet. If someone's going to claim that there's some benefit to eating animal foods, they have to identify where that benefit lies. If you're debating with a meat advocate, challenge them to identify the benefit. That's not too much to ask.